Computer terms you may not know, part 2. Okay, let's start with megahertz. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people have asked about megahertz, and we're going to talk about, first of all, what the hertz is. Now, we're going to start the conversation with a frequency. Now, frequencies have been around since the days of radio, and what happens is that you have frequency modulation, which is FM, okay, and how up and down the frequency is what you actually hear on your radio, okay, and these frequencies go up and down just like this. You've probably seen oscilloscopes that do this and so on and so forth. But when we're talking about hertz, we're talking about a complete cycle from, say, this point right here all the way up and back down to this point. When it goes from the bottom to the top to back down to the bottom again. Okay, when they do one complete cycle, okay, because it's going to go up and down and down and up. Okay, well, that makes a whole circle. Okay, if you were to take an up and down like this, chop it off and make a down and up like this, and chop it off and put it together, that makes a whole circle. So that's a cycle. Alright? Basically, you got an arc up here, you got an arc down here, you join the two arcs together, they make a circle, and boom. That's your cycle. Okay? Now, a hertz is one cycle. Now, if you have a megahertz, okay, you have 1,000,000 of these. Okay? So, if you were talking about megahertz, you'd have 1,000,000 cycles. Okay? Now, megahertz is measured in cycles per second. So if you're talking about megahertz, you're talking about 1,000,000 cycles per second. And the term hertz was attributed to a German guy named Heinrich Rudolf Hertz. Okay? And Heinrich Rudolf Hertz worked with electromagnetism most of his life. He was a pioneer in electromagnetism. So, hence, the measurement was named after him. Okay? Now, you've seen in computers that you have megahertz and now you have gigahertz. Okay. Gigahertz is 1,000,000,000 cycles. So you've gone from 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000 cycles. Okay? Now, computers complete instructions, a certain number of instructions per second. Now, these instructions are not the same as, like, if somebody tells you to take a vacuum sweeper and sweep the floor. Okay, computers would be more like, alright, go to the vacuum sweeper. So you actually walk to the vacuum sweeper. That would be instruction number 1. Pull in vacuum sweeper out of closet. That would be instruction number 2. Turn vacuum sweeper on. That would be instruction number 3. Roll vacuum sweeper across the floor. That would be instruction number 4. Pull back vacuum sweeper to make another strip. That would be instruction number 5. And so on until the floor was clean. That's what we're talking about in instructions. It wouldn't be like sweep the floor. Okay, you can do that. But with a computer, you have to first tell it, hey, walk to the sweeper, pull it out of the closet, turn it on, roll the sweeper forward, pull the sweeper back, go to the next section, push it forward, pull it back, so on and so forth until the floor was clean. So that's what we're talking about, instructions per second. Alright? So, if you're talking about kilohertz, it completes 1,000 instructions per second. If you're talking about megahertz, you're talking about 1,000,000 instructions per second. If you're talking about gigahertz, you're talking about 1,000,000,000 instructions per second. Okay. So I think you're finally getting the idea of how hertz is measured in a central processing unit. And I did cover CPUs in a previous video, so if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome. Now, what about baud rate? Well, this was named for a guy named J.M.E. Baud. Okay? and he invented the Baud telegraph code. Alright, and so now you're going to finally figure out where bit came from. Now, a bit in telegraph code would be the beep that you hear. You know, you'd hear that beep, 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 beep. Okay, every one of those beeps was a bit. Okay, and what happened was that when you tapped down to make that beep, okay, what really happened was you were sparking off a piece of electricity. It was an electromagnetic pulse. Well, not really so much magnetism, it was just it was an electronic pulse that you were sending across one of those electrical wires that would connect you to some other telegraph office in Timbuktu. Okay? So, you were sending an electrical jolt across that line every time you press down on that button, and that's what was called a bit. And that's why when I was talking about bit and byte, the 1 represented electricity going through the wire. 0 represented there was no electricity flowing through the wire. Ta-da! Okay, so that's where we get bit. And the information that was being sent was a 1 or a 0. And those 1s and 0s, when they were added up together, finally made a byte, which was a character of the alphabet. So you would hear beep, 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 and that beep, 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 beep would be some kind of alphabetic character. And of course, there was 26 characters in the alphabet, and so therefore, your alphabetical characters would be represented by a different set of beeps. And that's where we get all this stuff in computer technology today. Now, when you're talking about BPS these days, it's not necessarily baud per second, it is now bits per second, because you can send more than one piece of information in every electrical pulse now. In the old days you couldn't do that, but in these modern times you can send multiple pieces of instructions for every electronic beep that you type. Okay, so it's measured in bits per second instead of bauds per second. Okay, in the old days you could only send one piece of data according to the electro beep. Now you can send multiple that way. All right, you can send a multiple amount of information in that one little beep. And I could get into a lot of mathematics with you on that. I'm not going to, but now you know. All right. Another computer term that you don't know is called the RE. Now, you've seen this on emails. You see an email, you see in the subject line, you see RE in the subject line. Well, that comes from the Latin res. R-E-S. It's an ablative form of the noun. It's an ablative form of the Latin noun res. And it means about a topic. Okay? So if you're doing this, it would be more like regarding a topic or about a topic instead of some of the things that other people probably told you. Okay? And you can look up the Latin term res, R-E-S, and see what it actually means. So it's something, it's about a thing or something else like that. All right, so now you can look that up and you can see for yourself. Now, in a previous video, I told you that you could use hotkeys. I talked about hotkeys quite a bit, and one of the things I told you was that if you hold down the Alt button, press the letter E and press the letter A, you can highlight a whole bunch of text. Well, you can do the same thing in most word processors, and I'm going to show you this. If you hold down the Control button and you hit the letter A, Control A will also highlight all your text. So if you want to highlight all your text, all you have to do is hold down the Control button and hit the letter A, and that will do it. All right. Now, I think most of you know what forward means, and I'm sorry I just lost myself again, but you know what forward means on an email. If you don't, ask me and I'll cover it in a future topic. That's pretty much all I've got to say in this particular video. you've learned a lot today. And I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.